Donovan Broom here, back again doing another video here. And this is a basic tutorial on how to do nature photography. So without any more stalling, let's begin. First, you're going to need a camera. Any camera from any brand will do, but what's recommended for nature photography is something with interchangeable lenses like my Canon Rebel 6 or my Rebel T3, which was donated to me by the late photographer Bob Hart, who took note of my photography talent. Alternatively, if you're unable to get one of these cameras, a point-and-shoot camera of this type also will do the job just as well when starting out. In terms of interchangeable lenses, this is a macro one that was also given to me by Mr. Hart. It's currently in its protection case right now to keep it safe from dust and damage, though this is one of a good number of lenses you'll need if you're doing nature photography. On the topic of dust, you'll need lens wipes. I use these for my glasses, and I found they work well with cleaning camera lenses. Alternatively, if you don't have one of these cloth wipes, a cloth towel of soft material will do well as a good substitute. Next, you'll need batteries and battery chargers. This is the one that came with the PowerShot originally, but as you can tell, I've since bought backup chargers and backup batteries. This is recommended because you'll then have extra batteries and battery chargers in case batteries are either lost or wear out, or, if you need another battery while on location. I also highly recommend getting a battery charger similar to this one. This is one I ordered on Amazon, and it's great because you can plug it up to a wall, plug it into a car charger, or in this case, a portable battery, which is also recommended in terms of gear that you need to get. Because not only can you charge your camera batteries with this, you can also charge your phone or even a small laptop with this. Actually, no, this wouldn't charge a laptop. Actually, don't do that. Next, you'll need a memory card or memory cards. This is what I'm currently using, 128 gigabytes, though 32 to 64 gigabyte cards also work because they have plenty of space and room to spare. Next, you'll need a way to transfer the material on the cards to your computer. Now, these are some USB card readers I got off Amazon. As you can see, one has just a USB, the other has a Type-C port. Either way, you can get both or one, depending on what you have or what you need. Next, you'll need the ever-trustworthy plastic bag. This allows you to put all this smaller gear into something that'll keep it from being mixed up in the camera bag and will allow you to prevent damage to your camera equipment. Next, what you'll need is tripods. Now, for nature photography, it's best to use a tripod like this one with a fluid head because of its smooth movement, which negates camera shake, and as a result of camera shake, blurry photos. Alternatively, if you aren't able to afford a fluid head tripod, something like these two will work just as well after applying WD-40 to all the moving parts. The other advantage with these two tripods is that they're cheap and readily available, meaning if God forbid one of them broke, you could easily buy a new one. And also, since most of them have a standardized design, it allows you to do what I've done, which is cannibalize parts, particularly with this tripod design. This is one I use often and regularly. Cannibalizing parts off of older tripods or ones that have broken allows you to save at least some money and give you spares that you can use later if necessary, which allows for preventative maintenance as well. The last thing you'll need is camera bags. These are the two that I currently own and use. The one on the left is recommended because it holds a lot more gear and extra parts and whatnot. However, I only use mine for storage nowadays. The one on the right, however, as you can see, is what I use daily. It's smaller, it's compact, and if you know how to pack it just right, as you can see, You can fit 2 cameras in here along with all the various smaller bits of gear and equipment you'll need. With room to spare for the portable battery, its charging cord, lens wipes, and even a flashlight if you know which one to go for. Preferably a small one. To quote the photographer John Nguyen, to create memorable images, you need to do more than just merely master your equipment. You need to carefully consider the various, and often not so obvious, options available at any given moment in regard to lighting, composition, camera angles, and color. And to quote John Gerlach, the choices you must make in equipment depend on budget, equipment you already own, and your ambitions as a photographer. Next, you'll want to test your gear. So first, what you need to do is put the battery in the camera. Next, add the memory card, sliding it in until you hear a soft click indicating it's secure. Then close the battery compartment and turn the camera over. Turn the camera on via its on switch. Once it's on, use the record button to bring up the on-screen viewfinder. Once the on-screen viewfinder is up, do test shots as necessary while checking your equipment. Check the lens for dust and debris, while also testing the zoom ring on the lens. After you've tested the zoom ring manually, test the autofocus by holding the shutter button down halfway. Once the camera has selected whatever you're focusing in on, do a few practice shots to test the equipment to make sure it's all working. Then delete the practice shots or test shots to make room for the final product. Next, you'll want to attach the tripod mount, like so. Screw it down till it's tight. Flip the camera over. Set up the tripod. Attach the camera to its tripod. Lock it down till it's secured. Test the tripod to make sure there's fluid movement that won't inhibit the movement of the tripod. This ensures stable panning and pitching of the camera when capturing nature shots in motion, aka animals in motion or flowers on a windy day. Now that you've tested your camera equipment, the next thing you need to do is scout locations for the photography. That's what I'm doing today for this project. I'm currently in Gainesville, Georgia at one of their parks near the railroad tracks. The subject I'm using for the photography today for this project is Locomotive 209. The first steam locomotive I got to see in preservation. Is it a natural subject in the form of a plant or animal? No. But is it a good photography subject to show what I'm teaching you how to do stepwise? Oh, absolutely. Since I've decided the steam engine is going to be my primary photography subject today, I've got my normal equipment that I use out. So I'm not using the fluid head tripod. Instead, I'm using the one I normally use. And I'm going to center the camera on that area of the locomotive's driving rods. And I'm actually going to pick the camera's tripod up and move it a little bit closer in so I can get the main running gear here. And I'm pausing due to the wind. What I'm going to do is what I did when I was testing the equipment. So I'm turning the camera on. like so. I'm going to hit the record button here. I'm actually going to zoom the camera out this time. I'm going to use the panning arm here, or the pitch arm, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to focus in on the locomotive's drive rods, as you see there, and I'm using the built-in grid on the screen to keep the shot center, and the white box in the middle is to help me select what I want to photograph. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to slowly pan the camera so that driving wheel is center right there. I'm going to lock the arm down. I'm going to lock this down so it doesn't move. And now I'm going to use the zoom wheel and slowly ease this in to get the desired distance I want in the photo. Note that I'm using rule of thirds here. That must be one of Gainesville's locals. But yeah, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to hold the shutter button down halfway. Once that white selection box turns green, that means the picture is selected and ready to go, and all I got to do now is fully press down the shutter like that, and voila. Now this shot is already set to go, so all I got to do now is focus in, turn the camera a little bit to the right, pan up a bit, and then snap the shutter. This is a good example of using point of view and depth perception on a photo, where what's directly in front of you, aka this part of the engine's running gear, that's the main subject of the photo, while the background helps make it more interesting. This is another good example of rule of thirds. I've got my camera set on this driving wheel and this assembly portion of the running gear, and I want that to be the center of the photo. So I've got the camera lined up directly with the center of the driving wheel and the center of the connecting rods, where they go into the cylinder here. And I'm going to snap the shutter since it's already focused in. There we go. Now I'm going to use the lighting to my advantage, where I'm going to have the camera turned to look at the locomotive diagonally to get all the driving wheels, for the most part, in the shot. This shows most of the locomotive driving wheels and drivetrain. And that's the shot I want, so I'm now going to snap the shutter. Now to review these, I'm going to hit the playback button here. That brings up the review screen. I'm going to use the continuous and timer button and autofocus buttons to go back and forth. As you can see here, I'm hitting the continuous and timer button to go left through the pictures, and then autofocus to go right. If I were wanting to delete this, I would hit, I guess, audio video plus minus and then delete, and then I would go over to autofocus and hit erase, but I'm not doing that since I'm keeping these photos. If you'll notice, I've now moved locations. I was down there, now I'm up here so that I can get a better view of the cattails and photograph them better, thanks in part to using the lighting to my advantage. I'm now facing the direction the lighting is going, because you'll notice the sunlight's lighting up all of this. Everything that's in this general direction is being properly lit by the sun. So that's why I've got the camera angled this direction too. I'll have the best lighting for this picture. In terms of my camera now, I'm using the PowerShot, since it has a better lens that can zoom in closer than the Rebel. That's the one disadvantage of the Rebel and any other camera that uses detachable lenses. You can't zoom in far unless you have a telephoto lens. This sort of negates that issue. So now I'm going to pan the camera down and slowly, using the zoom wheel here, I'm going to zoom in slowly. Like on the Rebel, I'm going to hold the shutter button down halfway since I've got the cattail centered, and then I'm going to snap the shutter. Yeah, this camera has both grid lines to let you know if your photo is centered, and also a level bar at the bottom to let you know if you're centered and level, which is nice. I don't think the Rebel has that. We're now at the final location for the photography project, and it's this old chair mill here in Gainesville. I've photographed this location a good number of times in the past, but today is the first time I've photographed it in what I consider optimal conditions. Perfect lighting, perfect background with the sky, no clouds, no low lighting. Only thing I'm having to deal with right now is wind, but that's been negated easily by using the camera bag as ballast. So, what I'm going to do for this is I'm going to go from auto on my PowerShot to manual. And I'm going to use the scroll wheel, scrolling to the right, to adjust the lighting and contrast. Now in this case I've got it already set. What you don't want is for the photograph to look like that. Overly lit, too much contrast. In other words, too bright. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lower it down gradually using the scroll wheel until I get to the desired lighting I want, which is that. Then I'm going to go up here to plus minus in the binoculars, and I'm going to change it to this. As you can tell, if I scroll this way, it makes it too dark. If I scroll this way, well, there's not much of a difference. So I'm going to ease that down a bit by 1 or 2 notches, so right there. I'm going to go back to this. I'm going to try and focus in using the shutter. I'm holding the shutter down halfway. And you'll notice it's blue. That means it's not focused in properly, but that's no issue. Self-timer should fix that. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to aim the camera up a bit. There we go. And I'm going to zoom in a tad. I'm just lightly hitting the zoom. I'm lightly hitting the zoom slider right here where my finger's at. And I'm just lightly zooming in because I want those stacks to be at the very middle of the photograph. There we go. As close to the middle as I can get it, just like that. Now I'm going to go over to the timer, which is this button right here. I'm going to set it to 10 seconds. Hit select. I'm going to hold the shutter down, and then I'm going to press it. And then I'm going to stand back. That's to reduce camera shake. There we go. That just got the photo I wanted. But since that was just one shot, I'm going to do it again. So I'm going to hold the shutter button down halfway, press it down, stand back, and repeat the aforementioned steps. So that's my 2 shots of this particular scene. And you'll note I'm using the PowerShot instead of the Rebel because this camera has a better daylight sensor than the Rebel. I've noticed the Rebel has a better night sensor than it does a daylight sensor. Once you have your final photographs, you're going to want to go over and review them. So you're going to hit the display button here. And you'll want to use the scroll wheel or the manual focus or timer buttons to scroll through the photography. In this case, there's only 3 photos. So all that's left now is to head back home and edit them. Now that you've returned from the photography location, you now need to remove the memory cards from the cameras and begin the process of transferring the photographs to the computer for final editing and processing. To do this, of course, you're going to first need to remove the cards from the cameras. In this case, I've got stuff on both the Canon Rebel and the PowerShot. Open up each of the battery compartments in both cameras. Press down on the memory card slot, like so. And this will release the cards, like that. Anyways, once you have the cards removed, you want to close these up to prevent damage to each of the batteries, and then take these over to your computer. Once at your computer, you'll need to get your SD card reader, like what I mentioned at the start of this project, and plug it into your computer, which for me should be right there. Get the memory cards and insert them into the card reader. You're going to want to hit Open Folder, DCM, and you want to go up here to where you have the main file, which will be a numbered file like this one. What you'll want to do next, once you have the file open, is click and drag your mouse down to select all the files, or you can do select all. Hit Cut. Scroll up to whatever folder you want to put them in. In this case, I'm doing photography project. Then I'm going to hit Paste. That should transfer the files. Now, this is something only I do. I do not recommend doing this. But once you've transferred the files, and again, this is an optional step, clear the memory card so you can have room on it for future use, and so you don't mix up files. I've done that a good number of times by mistake, and it's not good. Since I've cleared all the photos off this card, I can delete stuff off of it, like so. Close this. Another example of my work there. Remove the card, being gentle with it, since that is a tight fit. Now that you have your photographs transferred to the computer, you'll want to go and edit them. To do this, you'll need to open your File Explorer, go to the folder in which the photos are in, open the folder, either right-click on the photo to open whatever photo editor you want to use. In this case, I'm going to use the computer's built-in photo thing, so in that case, I'm going to left-click or double-click on the photo and open it up. This is from a early test I did for this project. You'll want to go over here to Edit, and this brings up your editor. This one, which has everything from cropping all the way to background. What I'm going to be focusing on is mainly cropping the image and then editing the lighting and color, which can be accessed through this feature here, Adjustment. So first I'm going to crop this photo down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag the center crop line here down using the grid lines to center the photo vertically. Then I'm going to ease the left and right side of the photo's crop lines in using the grid lines again to help center the photo horizontally. Once I have the photo centered to the right size and dimension I want, I'll then go over to Adjustment, which brings up slider bars showing everything from brightness to sharpness. So first I'm going to change the contrast. I'm going to bump it up a little bit to about 30. Exposure I'm going to bring to negative 31 to 30. Highlights I'll bring back to negative 33 or 34. Shadows 44. Saturation, I'll bring it to about maybe 16 to 20. 20 seems good. And then warmth, I'll edge that back a little to about negative 4. Now that that's done, I'm going to go and save. Now I can either save as a copy, save or copy to the built-in clipboard. In this case, I'm going to save this since it's a finished photo. And that automatically got saved to the file. So if I refresh, it appears up here. Now that this photo is done, I'm going to go to the ones I worked on today. For the normal photography I do, this is actual work I photographed for today. But for this project, the locomotive shots are test shots. More examples, really. So here's what these photos look like currently. You'll note that everything is more or less centered. So I'm going to go to Edit, and I'm basically going to repeat everything you just saw me do, but I'm not going to talk. What I'm going to do differently with this one, though, is I'm actually going to make this have a black and white alternate. And what I just have to do with that is literally turn the saturation all the way to negative 100. Exposure, I'll turn that down to about, and I'll put that in the 30s. Contrast will be a bit higher. Highlights will be there. Shadows there. Brightness there. And warmth, there's really no point in using that. Now I'm going to save as copy. This will be image 3131. B and W alt, meaning black and white alt. And there's that. Here's the shot that showed perspective. The connecting rod here, this piece, is the main focus, but you have the other connecting rods and machinery making up the background. Now, you'll immediately see a problem with this photo, and that's the sun glare right here, the sunbeam. Now, if I was using Photoshop, this could be edited out easily to make the photo look flawless. However, this is why I like to do the simple editing you're seeing me do now. I like for the photographs to be authentic because it shows that there's a bit of honesty present. I like keeping my photographs authentic because I see and hear enough stories about photography being doctored up to look better or to fit in with the crowd. I don't want mine to fit in. I want it to stand out. I want there to be imperfections because it makes the photography more realistic. It makes it more human. You know, it gives a more human element to it. And this is one case where the mistake is a blessing because it makes the photo unique. And these are some example photos I got from earlier takes of this project in Winterville. So what you're going to want to do is you're wanting to go over here to Edit Image, click it. You're going to want to go over here from Crop to Adjustment, right? You'll bring up all these slider bars, everything from brightness to sharpness. Now, what I'm going to do first is change the exposure. I'm going to move it to about 22. Contrast will be around, I'd say 30, 35. Highlights will be negative 27. Shadow, 41 to about 35. Saturation is going to be about slight, about 19 to 20. Now you can drag the slider with your mouse, or once you've got it selected enough, you can then use the arrow keys on your keyboard for more fine tuning. So I'm keeping that at 20. Warmth, probably bump that down to about 4. Check for selection. I just used the scroll wheel to zoom in on the photo here, so you can see the individual pixels. And now brightness, I'll just chuck that down to about 7 or 8. Once you're satisfied with how you've gotten the photo in terms of color and whatnot, you can go over here to the drop down for save options and go to save. And there you go. Now I'm going to do that with this one next. And now this is a good example of why lighting is key for photography, because it makes or breaks the picture. Lighting can determine the kind of mood you're wanting to set, the kind of atmosphere you want regarding the subject. It helps your photo tell a story, and even potentially tell a story about the subject you're photographing. Now, with this photo here, you can see that the purple bluish flower is the main subject, and you've got all this floral stuff in the background, but you'll notice it's not centered. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here to the side of the crop thing on the left side and slowly drag it till the grid lines line up. And I'm going to edge the photo to the right a bit till each side of the outer petals is on each evenly spaced on each side of the grid lines on the left and the right. That helps center the photo. And then I'm going to repeat the same process you saw just earlier. And I'm doing this by just clicking random spots on these slide menus here. This is how I've done this photography of mine for the last 8 to 9 years, and it's worked fairly good for the most part. I'm going to change the exposure a bit because I want to be able to see each individual ridge there on the petals. These things here and here. I like the finer details, the stuff you normally wouldn't see. Now here's a shot that I did earlier during my attempted takes for this project. The center flowers you see here are what's the main focus. Everything else is quite literally blurred out in the background, indicating that is not the primary focus, but rather these wilting flowers are the primary focus. Because of that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this down to about here, and I'm going to save this as a copy. Exposure, I'll leave that. Contrast is going to be what's next, because if you'll notice, it bloomed the picture, meaning it amplified its color. See, this is without the contrast up. This is with it up. So I'm going to ease that back to about 22. Exposure is going to be forward by about -20. When I say forward, I mean this way. Highlights will be down. Shadow will be down. Way down, actually. Highlight as well. Saturation will be, I'll say about 15. And warmth will be around 5 to 7. Now that I'm looking at it further, 5 to 4 would be better. There we go. Brightness will be around 8. Once you're satisfied with a particular copy of the photograph, say this example, you'll hit the save icon or save a copy icon in the photos thing, and it'll bring up your file explorer menu here. Now, as you can see, this is now labeled with the original photos file name, which is image_3104. I'm going to put cropped copy. I just realized that's misspelled. There we go. Then I'm going to go over here to 100 Canon. That's where I've got some other photos from miscellaneous stuff I've gone to, as noticed here. And I'm going to hit save. And that automatically saves the finished photo. And in said file explorer, if I hit refresh, you'll see that any photos I edit are now appearing in the Today section here. And that helps separate what I have edited from what I haven't. And I've still got all this material to go through. So let's start with this. This was a flower I photographed in Livonia. As you can tell by the picture's background, the lighting was low. So therefore, the color is a lot more clear. So contrast is going to be used here. Exposure, definitely. Brightness, however, is going to have to be turned down because now you can see the detail on the petals because of the brightness being lower. Highlights will be applied for this picture. Shadows will be greatly reduced into the negative category, around -40, to allow for the flower in the center of the photo to take precedence. Saturation will be about 30. And warmth, let's go for, not that one, that's too blue. Let me go to about -8. Now for this case, I'm going to go back to the cropping feature because this is a good example of a photo where I got part of the subject but not the whole thing. I wanted to get both of these flowers but couldn't focus on both of them due to the gap that's here. So I'm going to crop this out here, and then I'm going to crop this out here until we have a center photograph right here. A 3185 by 3456 print. But I'm also going to crop out the top, just like so. This is to get that bit of grass that you just saw out of the background. So now we have our finished piece. I'm going to hit save, and voila, there we are. Once you've edited the photographs, you'll want to then save them. For me, I saved the finished work in my Google Drive, so this step is very, very easy. All you have to do is select the photos, drag them from your files to Google Drive, and drop them in. Once you've saved your photography either to your files or to Google Drive, that's pretty much the last thing you have to do. And I'm happy to say that upon completing that final task, you will have gotten a basic understanding of how to do nature photography, how to edit it, and how to archive your work for later when people wish to see it or even wish to display it. But before I go, I wanted to share some of my photography that I consider my best work. These photographs are the result of 8 years of self-taught experience. And I want to share them because nowadays, almost every digital device we carry in our pockets has a camera built into it. And that's made it to where most people can just take the phone out, take a photo of something and call themselves a photographer. But the kind of work I'm sharing in the end of this, over this voiceover, is the result of someone doing photography and having an eye for what they're wanting to photograph. And in a way, someone who wants to, evoke an emotion, tell a story, share an experience, that sort of thing. Basically, I want to share this stuff because it's the result of the very steps I've shown in this video project. I shared them because, if those interested in photography follow the steps I've shown, it's not only possible for them to succeed in nature photography and photography in general, but mastering the art of photography in its entirety as a whole, to where they'd be able to, make work that not only exceeds mine, but outright buries it in terms of quality and, presentation. But aside from this, I hope all of you have enjoyed this project, and I hope you find the steps I've put into it useful.